Yeah, so let's talk about the exposure triangle
The what now?
because hopefully to try and get more viewers or
Yeah.
listeners, instead of just talking about camera news, we should talk about
Camera stuff.
camera stuff and learning about your camera. If you're new to photography, um, you want to know how to get out of the automatic mode, right?
Yeah.
And so that's like talk about the exposure triangle.
So the exposure triangle, in brief, is just like, not. I don't want to say a theory. That's not the right word.
No,
It's like a tool to help you understand
exactly.
how you measure light.
Just like we're tools to help you understand.
Chuck's a tool.
So the exposure triangle we're looking it's shutter speed,
Mm-hmm.
aperture, and ISO.
Yeah.
So we'll start with shutter speed. And shutter speed is pretty explanatory. It's how long your shutter is open for.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to freeze action, you want to increase your shutter speed. If you're trying to show movement in your photo, you want to decrease your shutter speed. Now, increasing and decreasing your shutter speed also changes how much light is being let into the sensor. So if on a bright sunny day, if you have your shutter open too long, you're going to be having an overexposed shot.
Mm-hmm.
So now we move over to aperture. And aperture is the opening in the lens.
It's the butthole of the lens.
The butthole of the lens. So
I don't know why.
the lower number... What?
I was gonna say I don't know why you say opening and my mind's like butthole. Sorry. Back to class.
Yeah.
All right.
So the lower the number, so if you have like a 2.8 lens,
Mm-hmm.
2.8 opens up really wide. Oh man. Okay.
All right.
And this is why we don't teach in schools.
This is why we should teach in schools. We'd be banned so fast.
Oh fuck yeah.
Just like we'd be kicked off the news.
Yeah.
We're not professionals in any way, shape,
No.
or form. Professional photographer? I don't know if I'd call myself that.
No. We're
Immature.
professional and yeah. Yeah. Immature. Yeah. So anyways.
Shutter speed. No.
No.
I'm really good
Aperture.
at paying attention in class.
So the higher the number, the smaller the opening.
The smaller the
The
better.
tighter it gets.
Yes. So, yeah, going off of that, it's also responsible for your shallow depth of, or your depth of field. So the lower the number is, it also is responsible for your brightness. The lower the number is, the kind of blurrier it is, shallower depth of field. So if I wanted to take a really nice, this is how I explain it to people. If I wanted to take a really nice picture of Chuck,
Yeah, good luck.
first of all, not possible. Get yourself an indestructible lens. Because that glass is gonna crack.
Yeah.
Um,
I can edit you out of this.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, go.
Like I could just cut you and you're gone. Screw
Wow.
you. Yeah.
Okay.
Insulting me like that.
Are you quitting the podcast?
No.
No, you're kicking me from the
fired.
podcast.
I'm gonna do that too, eh? Draw a line right here. And then cut you out.
I'm on your side of the line.
She touched me. COVID.
Sorry. Depth of field. So
Depth
if I
of
wanted
field.
to take a nice picture of you, and I wanted your face to be nice, like your eyes to be nice and in focus, and then the background to fall out all blurry, which is typically what people kind of think of when they think of like portrait photography.
Yeah.
That's a shallow depth of field. It just makes my plane of actual focus a lot smaller. So that number is lower with that. So like a f1.8, gorgeous focal, or not focal length, gorgeous aperture for portraits.
Yeah.
And then the higher you go up, the less light you allow in, and the more you get in focus.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm explaining this really well.
So the way I like to explain it is like a window.
Yeah.
Okay, so your sensor is the window.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And your aperture are the blinds.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have the blinds wide open, all this light is being let in. Right?
That's a very good
If you
analogy.
lower the blinds, less light, of course, is being let in.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with the aperture. And that will affect your depth of field. And me personally, I don't get it. It makes no sense to me, but that's the way it works. Okay.
Yeah.
So not the letting in more light. It's the depth of field.
Yeah. Don't even, it's the...
For me, if I feel that if it's a wide open aperture, your depth of field should be insanely deep.
Yeah.
Right? But it's the opposite.
Yeah,
it's very
that's weird.
shallow. Yeah,
It's very
it confuses
weird.
me.
If I think too deeply about the actual mechanics of this and like why they were developed that way, it sends me into an existential crisis.
ISO. So ISO stands for...
In search of.
No, it doesn't.
I know. I just made it up. You look so angry. I'm sorry. Okay, ISO stands for what?
Intelligent Scientific Origin.
Is that actually what it stands for?
No, I have no idea what it stands for.
It's funny because on film, your ISO is also known as ASA,
Yes.
which... Okay. It's weird to me.
Yeah.
ISO.
So basically, that's the ISO is your sensor's sensitivity to light.
Oh, I looked up ISO stands for, and the first thing was in search of, but that's not in reference to...
You thought
I
you
was
were
like-
a genius.
I'm so fucking smart. Just kidding.
No.
Your ISO is responsible for light as well.
Yes. So it's your your sensor sensitivity to light, right? So the lower number, the less sensitive your sensor is to light. But the more you increase that number, the more you increase your sensor's sensitivity,
Yeah.
the more you increase digital noise.
Yeah. I
And
call
that's
it...
that grainy look.
Yeah, I call it like an artificial light.
Yeah. So now, with all these being explained, your exposure triangle is trying to balance out all three of these to get the proper exposure.
Yeah.
So you want your proper ISO, your proper shutter speed, your proper aperture. And when you put your camera in auto, it'll do all three of them.
Yeah.
And it doesn't know what you're trying to shoot. It doesn't care what you're trying to shoot. It's just trying to get the best exposure.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all.
Yeah.
So if you're shooting your kids playing soccer and you put it in auto mode, there's a good chance you're going to have blurry photos.
Yeah, because it's just guessing.
Yeah.
It's not that intelligent, so...
Now, if you put it in, let's say a lot of cameras have multiple auto modes, and if you put it in a sport mode, what it's going to do is it's going to prioritize shutter speed. So
Yep.
it's going to try and increase the shutter speed more and lower your aperture and increase your ISO.
Yeah. So you're basically telling the camera that you're photographing something that you want in, like, crisp speed, if that makes sense. You want it to be nice and quick.
Yeah.
And the camera will make up for everything else. Will compensate for everything else.
You can take control of all these settings in your manual mode.
Yeah.
right? And there's a little meter at the bottom. If you look through the viewfinder, at the bottom there's a little meter that shows your exposure. And you want it pretty much right in the middle. You could try and overexpose. Sorry, I did not mean to do that. You could overexpose or underexpose depending on the situation you want to do.
Yeah.
Right. But if you go in the manual mode, you control all these settings yourself and go with the artistic look that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Not letting the camera control everything. You control the camera.
Yeah.
Right. If you're too afraid of manual mode, you could use your shutter priority mode.
Yeah.
Your aperture priority mode, or program mode, which is ISO priority.
Yeah.
I would stay away from program mode.
Yeah.
It's...
I put people on program when they want to turn off their flash.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, use that. That's your off flash setting. I know there's a no flash setting right next to auto. Yeah. Don't use that.
So yeah, and that's pretty much it.
That's the using... I swear by using aperture and shutter priority. Yeah. Using aperture and shutter priority are like my go-to pieces of advice for people who are wanting to actually learn things about their camera.
Yeah.
I wish I discovered those before manual. I didn't shoot in full manual until I was already like a couple weeks into my program in like post-secondary for photography.
Okay.
But if I could go back and have like more advice from like camera people, because when I was in high school and just starting out, none of my friends were photographers, so I didn't really have internet a lot of the time, so I just figured it out, right? And I never went to other settings because I was too afraid, which is why it took me so long to get used to manual. But I think that if I could go back and use aperture priority and shutter priority and be aware of them, I would probably have started using manual a lot sooner.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like I would have progressed in like my photography skills a lot faster.
Yeah.
So everybody that comes into the store, I'm like, listen, you can use your scene settings. They're fun. You can kind of get a feel for who wants to use their scene settings first, and who's like ready for a little bit more. Scene settings are first. So if you're just starting out and you literally just want to get off auto, those are a good thing. But if you're kind of wanting to grasp onto the actual like triangle basically, jump into aperture and shutter priority. The other thing I wanted to mention is there's actually, for some reason, I always had a really hard time in school and even now, having my mind grasp onto the triangle concept, because there's a couple different concepts for like understanding the way they interact with each other. We can also insert a table, which I'll send you.
We're using a table right now.
No, it's like an infographic that I found, and you can see it everywhere, and it's like a slider scale kind of thing.
Okay.
Have you seen that one?
No.
So on the scale, it's basically just like a timeline or a scale or whatever, straight across. On one end, there's a sun, and on one end, there's like a moon for brightness and darkness.
Right.
And then you kind of scale them along there. There's usually 3 in a row, so it kind of explains your depth of field and all that.
So yeah, I think that's it for our lesson plan.
People are like, please stop teaching ASAP.
Let us know if there's anything else you want us to explain.
Normally when we like work and stuff, before COVID, I don't know if you ever taught classes, but when we work, we teach a lot.
Yeah.
Then it's a lot more natural. So I'm not sure if I'm just having a hard time because I'm not in the mindset to teach right now.
It's like we have interaction with the customer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, you guys are not replying as we're talking.
Yeah, so it's a little more...
I can't hear you.
Speak a little louder. Try that.
I still can't hear you.
Yeah, so we're used to having like one-on-ones, and just before COVID, we were teaching classes and stuff, which was nice, but it's a little easier to do it one-on-one. But if any of you have any questions, we're usually pretty good at explaining it. Yeah. Maybe this wasn't...
You know, there's probably people talking to the computer right now going, how come they can't hear me?
That I can't answer.
Yeah. Because you are beyond
You are beyond
our
help.
help.
Yeah, so if you guys want to learn anything else, we talk to a lot of beginners and people of all different levels
Yeah.
in the field, and I feel like we have some pretty good answers for people, and I feel like we're also pretty non-judgmental for the most part. On the podcast, it might be a different story, but at work, we're not judgmental. Because you can't be, right? Like,
Exactly.